You just watched a journalist accuse Israel of starving civilians on live air, but instead of dodging, Netanyahu hits back with facts, with numbers, and a reality check no one was ready for. Let's watch this live, this entire dismantling of this lie.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Given what the IPC says is the unfolding spectre of famine in the Gaza Strip, would you accept that your 11-week blockade, complete blockade on Gaza, played a role in that? And also, given the killings that we have seen at the GHF aid sites, how will you guarantee that that kind of disaster will not happen when you have 1 million more people displaced? Thank you.
Before we even hear the answer, it's just astounding to me the entrenchment that these journalists live in of what they know to be true. How is it that I, who am not a journalist, know better than all of the supposed facts she's basing her questions on? That is really what's disturbing, because they live in complete bias and agenda. There is nothing objective about these journalists, and that's why their journalism is ugly, despicable, and filled with lies.
Well, number one, the problem that we had was trying to stop Hamas looting. There's no question there was Hamas looting. Everybody saw it. You could see it. Hamas terrorists taking over trucks and so on. We tried to do two things simultaneously: stop the trucks and bring in the trucks through the GHF distribution points. Okay, it wasn't successful. And it wasn't successful, among other things, because Hamas interdicted also the GHF program, the distribution point. So Hamas created this problem, and it was directed against us. Immediately, we have a starvation policy, which is completely false, any more than we have a genocide policy, which is equally false. We don't. Not this, not that. I don't know of a country that texts millions of messages to civilians to get out of harm's way, giving up the element of surprise, or calling them individually on cell phones. Yet Israel is accused of genocide. It's absurd.
And this is the most amazing and astounding point. How can, if Israel wanted to commit genocide, they would have committed genocide. A few bombs, they would have decimated the entire Gaza. That's genocide? Israel is literally doing everything possible to protect civilians in an impossible situation, which he's going to explain here.
Or starvation policy. But there was a problem of deprivation, no question about it. And so we had to solve it. And the way we solve it is the way I described it to you. And there are now not zero trucks, but at least in, I think last time I checked, hundreds of trucks that went into Gaza. That's alleviating the situation. Now we want to increase the number of distribution sites. So there's not, basically you answer this problem, or you solve this problem by the law of supply and demand. If you have a lot of supply, if you flood Gaza with food, which some of it will be pilfered, there's no way to get around that, will be looted by Hamas, but you'll have, if enough food reaches the marketplace, so to speak, then you'll see a difference. And you know what the difference is? How do we know for sure there's a difference? Because we monitor, as any one of you could, the price of food in Gaza. It's plummeted. It's plummeted ever since that we decided to take to do the humanitarian surge. And it'll plummet more if other countries join us. So I called on other countries to join in the airdrops. I actually called them to help persuade the UN to move those trucks, because every truck that goes in brings down the price of food. That's what happens. And when you have no shortage like that, then you don't have also the crowding around distribution points. And by the way, a lot of the firing was done by Hamas, seeking to have response by our forces, and very often they didn't. They held back. They stayed their fire, even though their own lives were on the line. Yeah.
We're done. Thank you, Prime Minister.
We're done?
Yeah.
Well, I couldn't resist that one.
Thank you. Matthew Doran from ABC Australia.
Oh, okay.
Matthew Doran from ABC Australia. You've
Yeah.
seen countries such as the UK, Canada, France say that they will support Palestinian statehood in the next short while. You've described that as a reward for Hamas here. other countries like Australia are also walking down this path, not quite there yet. How much of this is a reward for Hamas, and how much of it is actually countries like those who have repeatedly said Israel does have a right to defend itself, but are now struggling to stomach what they're seeing you and your military doing in Gaza?
Well, first of all, those who say that Israel has a right to defend itself are also saying, but don't exercise that right. When we do what any country would do faced with this genocidal terrorist organization that has performed the worst attack on Jews since the Holocaust, I think we're actually applying force judiciously, and they know it. They know what they would do if right next to Melbourne or right next to Sydney you had this horrific attacks. I think you would do it, at least what we're doing, probably maybe not as efficiently and as precisely as we're doing it. We've lost quite a few soldiers in that effort. But that's the first thing. I think that the second thing you ask is Palestinian state. Well, the assumption, the prevailing assumption in this is that the problem that we have with the Palestinians is the absence of a Palestinian state. And if they were given a Palestinian state, they would stop the efforts to destroy the Jewish state. But the Palestinians were offered a state many times, including in the partition resolution, and they turned it down. They were offered statehood by my predecessors with lavish concessions. They turned it down. Because the Palestinians are not about creating a state, they're about destroying a state. That's why they opposed the Jewish national movement to create a state. It's called Zionism. They opposed it before the inception of the Jewish state, and they've opposed it since. They've opposed it when they had the Judea and Samaria, the West Bank, and Gaza in their hold. They didn't say, let's create a state there. They didn't say that. Because again, their goal is the destruction of a state. It defies imagination or understanding how intelligent people around the world, okay, including seasoned diplomats, government leaders, and respected journalists, fall for this absurdity. It's so easy to verify, you know. And look at the PA, okay? Look at the Palestinian national movement today is divided, okay? Divided between two forces, okay? The Palestinian Authority in Judea and Samaria and Hamas in Gaza, okay? Hamas in Gaza had a de facto state. It had a state. And it used it to launch a war of terror against Israel because their doctrine is that the destruction of Israel should proceed with forceful and direct military and terrorist moves. That's what they did on October 7th. And that's what they'll do again if we don't destroy them. The Palestinian Authority, on the other hand, says no. First, Israel has to be reduced to indefensible boundaries. You've got to get them out with the ICC, with the UN, with the Security Council resolutions, drive them to indefensible boundaries, and then deliver the blow. Because Israel is too strong in its present configuration. These discussions are open, they're held. You don't need Israeli intel for it, believe me. Okay? You can just scour the web, you'll find it, okay? So they have no difference about the goal. That's why the Palestinian children in Judea and Samaria and the Palestinian children, that is the Palestinian children under the PA and the Palestinian children under Hamas, are educated with exactly the same textbooks. That's why the PA calls its public squares against mass killers of Jews. That's why they have pay for slay. The more Jews you murder, the more you get paid. Or your family gets paid. I mean, so that's the crux of the problem. The real reason that this conflict persists is not because of the absence of a Palestinian state, but the persistent Palestinian refusal to recognize a Jewish state in any boundary, okay? Now, when you give them a Palestinian state, when they haven't abandoned the goal of destroying the Jewish state, all you're doing is you're bringing the next war closer. Again, Hamas had a state. You just brought the war closer. And if you did the same thing in Judea and Samaria, right above Tel Aviv, enveloping Jerusalem, some say cutting Jerusalem into two, that's all that's going to happen. You're going to have the radicals again take it over, Iran take it over, and start a state from improved boundaries, start a war with improved boundaries. That's not going to happen. I think the solution to this problem is that the Palestinians should have all the powers to govern themselves in the places where they live and none of the powers to threaten Israel. They should obviously reform their whole education system. They should reform their whole historical outlook and say, all right, we accept that Israel is here to stay, not as a fact, as a physical or geographic fact, but as a fact of historical equity. If they want to live here next to us, they have to stop seeking our destruction. And to give them an independent state with all the trimmings, okay, is to invite a future war and a certain war. And that's something that today the Israeli public forcefully opposes. Before the war, by the way, it was about, two-thirds in the overall population. Probably 60-40, or even more, in the Jewish population. But now it's changed more dramatically. I mean, we had a vote in the Knesset a few months ago about the possibility of, having a Palestinian state. And the result was 99-9. 99-9. And that covers a very broad spectrum. And today, most of the Jewish public is against the Palestinian state for the simple reason that they know it won't bring peace, it'll bring war. To have European countries and Australia march into that rabbit hole, just like that, fall right into it, and buy this canard is disappointing, and I think it's actually shameful. But it's not going to change our position. Again, we will not commit national suicide to get a good op-ed for 2 minutes.
The Prime Minister explained this so simply and clearly. Anyone who doesn't understand this is biased, agenda-driven, and is not interested in the facts or in what is to the true benefit of the citizens of Israel and the citizens of the PA and of Gaza. If you care about humanity, you will understand this has nothing to do with a Palestinian state, and a Palestinian state will be the most dangerous thing that you can bring to the Middle East today, which would be a perpetuation of October 7th and everything that was going on before October 7th, until it hit that extreme. They are not interested in peace. We ripped Jews out of Gaza. One of the biggest mistakes Israel has ever made. We ripped Jews out of Gaza to give it to the Palestinians, and they turned it into a terrorist hole, no pun intended, just to continuously attack from 2005 until today, thousands and thousands and thousands of rocket attacks on the innocent civilian population of Israel. There is no interest whatsoever in peace. There is no interest in two-state solution. There's an interest in one thing, getting rid of Israel. Israel must get rid of them. And when I say rid of them, I don't mean that they have to be killed, but they have to be gotten out of that region because they are terrorism sitting on the border of Israel. At any moment they attack, as they've done for the last 70 years.